Hello, hello, and welcome to another 60 minutes of on dotnet Live. It's unscripted. We are live, so send it our way. Our mission is to empower the dotnet community to achieve more. I'm your host, Myra Wenzel, with my co-hosts, David Pine and Cam Soper. And I'd like to welcome today's guest, Kristoffer Strube. He's going to be talking about wrapping browser APIs in Blazor WASM. So I'm curious to hear about that. So why don't you introduce yourself, Kristoffer?
Yeah. My name is Kristoffer. I'm from Denmark. I'm 24 years old, so I'm pretty young. And I'm studying for my master in computer science at Aarhus University. I've been blogging for some years, primarily at my previous job at Elmer.io, which is also here in Denmark. And then recently I've been into like microblog on Twitter a bit more, which is fun to engage with people and share what I'm doing.
Yeah. Awesome. Welcome to today's shows. So let's do some related bits first.
Awesome. I'll take this from here. So in related bits, we do have an article we'd like to share, and it's basically how you're going to approach JavaScript interoperability from Blazor. So I know that Kristoffer is going to be sharing how he wrapped the file access APIs, specifically in WebAssembly. But this article has all the JavaScript bits, everything you'd ever want to know about JavaScript interoperability. It's a 79-minute read. I think that's because there's different versions. So, but as you scroll through this, you'll see just a wealth of knowledge on how to approach JavaScript interoperability. This goes in immense detail, covering everything from which serialization library is used and how to isolate JavaScript into modules, where the JavaScript files should be located, and talks about some of the differences with Blazor server, the hosting model, as compared to the WebAssembly model. So there's lots and lots of information in here. And
so David,
yeah.
I'm wondering if you can contextualize this a little bit. So when we talk about calling JavaScript functions from .NET methods in Blazor, what are we talking about? If I'm like a newbie here and I don't know what that title means.
Sure. So when you're running a Blazor application, depending on the hosting model, let's just say for the sake of argument, we're doing WebAssembly. So you have .NET running inside the client browser. So your C# code can actually call into JavaScript. Likewise, you can have JavaScript then call back into your .NET code. So interoperability, meaning you've got some existing JavaScript functionalities, either something you've wrote or a library that you're pulling in, or an official API that's just natively there within your browser as per the spec. For example, with like file system, file access, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You can rely on those and call them from .NET. So you're basically marshaling back and forth between JavaScript and .NET.
Gotcha. So would it be possible then for a .NET developer to like code a complete Blazor UI, like using like .NET method calls to access like that file access API and everything without like touching JavaScript at all?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So there are like native JavaScript things per various specs that exist. And you can call wholeheartedly from the interop into those things that exist. Like, so a canonical example is like local storage. So local storage exists, and there's a storage interface. And if you're to hit F12 or DevTools open up in your browser, you can walk up to window.local storage, and you'll see the implementation there. It's there natively in your browser. And since that JavaScript is natively there, you could call purely from .NET into those, but you'd have to write a little bit of code that does that for you. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the related bits. There's a whole bunch of information here. So I encourage you to, if you're curious about what's there, what's capable, what you're, able to do with it, check it out.
Yeah, and someone asked for the link, so you can see on the ticker below now.
Yep. It's aka.ms/onnetlive/call JS functions.
Awesome.
All right, so I think we can jump to our topic of the week and have Kristoffer talk about what he's been doing and what he...
So we're jumping into the hallway track?
Do we have banner for that too?
We do.
Sorry about that.
No, that's perfect.
I don't like
I don't like spending much time on related bits anyways. I prefer selfishly to have the conversations here.
Yes, it's the same thing, but we can involve our guests and like he can jump in and also help with questions and the subject as well.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to hear about this week's topic. So you've been working on an open source project related to what David was just talking about, Kristoffer. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So the browser has a lot of APIs. Like David talked about, the local storage API is one example, which is an API that's available in, I guess, all browsers almost. except for the ones that are pretty limited, like maybe Electrum or something like that. But a lot of these APIs are available in a lot of browsers, and they open up for a lot of possibilities that people might not think about having a website do. Stuff like opening the file system, writing to that, so on, which is what I worked on. Actually, the reason why I was inspired to work exactly on this was because I saw a Twitter post where someone from the team who made it, I'll just made this small app. I think I can see it here, which is just a simple text editor. But this is all a website, which is not hosted locally on my computer, but it hosted on a website. And in this scenario, they just made it into a progressive web app, which kind of makes it more nice with a theme and so on, which is pretty cool. And what they did was basically making something similar to Notepad, where you could open some file and then begin to edit it and save it, and then getting some notification that, hey, you changed this file. Are you sure you want to save that? Yes. And now that's saved on my local file system.
So what we're looking at right here, where is this running?
So this is running in Chromium as a progressive web app on my desktop.
Okay.
But actually, it's just a pointer to a website. I think we could find the same text editor in the original article I found. File system API. I think it was here. And then down here, they have this guy that has worked on this API. They have built this kind of small example, which is this text editor, which if we open that, is just the same application, just as website. So they just made that available as like a progressive web app, which is kind of like an app, more of an app feeling. But I found this really cool, so I wanted to make that available in Blazor, because if you can make apps that feel like a desktop app, which is written in C#, but where the styling and all that is available in HTML and CSS, which I know a lot of people know by heart, then I think that could be pretty cool. Which I think
really
is
cool.
what Blazor does often, like making a lot of things available to a lot of people.
So based on that text editor there, did you start creating your own text editor then, just with using your Blazor version of it?
Yeah, that was basically the start. So I have a GitHub repository here, and then that hosts a small example demo website, which is a sample project, just on GitHub pages. So we have that over here. And then I have one of the pages. This is just the default template for a Blazor project. And then I can open a file, which will open my normal file picker. And I can open this example file that I have. And then I can press that I want to read it, which is like another invocation through the JS browser API. And then right now I can't edit it, but I can make another request to actually be able to edit this file, which was similar to what we saw before when we actually saved the file. So now I have something very similar to what we saw before. This is cool.
So out of curiosity, you had to do like 3 different sequences using your API. So is it fair to assume that perhaps the text editor app that you had shown earlier was kind of composing all 3 of those in a single action? Like when you just do file open,
Yeah,
it opens it, it reads it, and then it says, hey, we have permission to update it.
Yeah. I just wanted to, like in this example, because I know people would look at these and like try to draw inspiration from them, like show that you can actually do these in steps, and that you can see the state of what access you have to the file right now. For example, I also like, if you go back and try to open it again, we saw that I first read the file and then I got write access afterwards. Now I already have write access because I didn't close the window. But you could actually just request write access, like to go off with, like from the start.
Yeah, that makes sense. We actually have Jason Perry here in the chat asking, the file dialogues, they're native, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the nice things, that you get the native feeling while being in the browser. But it's similar to the same pop-up that you will get if you use the like file picker option. I think there's an input file control in Blazor as well, which it is very similar to. But this is all in what you would all day call code behind. So it's, for some, they like it more. I saw a guy on Twitter who was like, yeah, we have basically what we need from the default controls, or some controls that other people made. But it's nice to see this more code-based attempt at doing these things.
I'm just envisioning, my mind is just going crazy here. I'm just thinking like how cool it would be to put like a language server that sits here and examines like the file extensions and determines what programming language, like if you're opening up like a C# file, for example, and then you can textually add like syntax highlighting to that file, like the rendering of it, like conditional stuff, like, and then you have like a, an IDE in your browser, right? Imagine like statement completion and things like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, you could imagine like something like VStudio is already now VStudio Code is already JavaScript based. So having that in the browser, just opening your local file system, because we cannot only just open files. Actually, this is just to open the file example. We can also open whole directories and get permission to all the like recursive files that are in that directory. And for that, I made another example because I want to have some fun with a file tree map, where I visualize how much each file fills in this folder that I picked. And then we can hover over them and see the path for the different files and how much they fill, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, the screens reminded me of like the blank broadcast on TV, like where there's
yeah.
We'll continue soon.
No, what it reminds me of is a tool called Winderstat, which does exactly what he just did there.
Yeah.
So the colors, what do they represent?
I think I use some default spreading that just tries to spread how many different values you want over a wide spectrum. But basically, these are the same folder. So, for example, these two are both in the. Maybe I'll have to zoom in. Oh, that doesn't fit because I haven't fixed it for resizing. But these are in the same folder, and these two are in the same folder, and then these are in each are in the root folder.
So, like most developers, you struggle with CSS.
So each,
of course,
each box is a file, and then each color is a directory. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
And then like they also like the sizes that represent the file size, right?
Yeah. So we see that this is one of the biggest files, but that's it's just a way to like show the people, hey, you can do all kind of stuff if you have access to the directory.
So how much code is involved for something like this?
Okay, so this is one of the bigger examples, I guess, because I have to go through the directories and then I have to recursively call all the subdirectories. So there's some bookkeeping to be done in order to make this traversal. Also, if you have a very big hierarchy, you maybe want to do like a breadth first in order to get like the big perspective first. So that was some like where I also had some fun with like some looking back at some algorithm courses, which was fun. Not anything advanced, but nice to look back at. I can show up here actually how much is it's quite a bit.
I was hoping you'd click that.
Yeah, it is a bit. So up here we have some of the the styling and the HTML and so on.
And this we can zoom in a little bit.
I can zoom in a bit. Yeah. It's basically just we have a button to start off with, which triggers some action that we want to execute, and that then basically fills this root entry with some children, which has some more children recursively. So when that gets filled, we hit the else statement instead, and then we actually show the whole tree map. And that tree map is something inspired by another project I did with like doing a tree map data visualization in Blazor.
So the tree map chart, is that also a component that you wrote, or is that
Yeah, that's one I wrote as well, which is why it's not that beautiful. It was not the full intent of this project, I guess, to make it very beautiful. But the whole code of actually calling these different functions is kind of down here. So we first have this try catch, because sometimes we get exceptions. For example, if you try to open that directory and then it fails because you canceled it, you get an JavaScript exception, and you can capture that. And right now I just write it to the console of the browser, but I guess you could do something more smart with it.
So I have maybe written like one Blazor app my entire life, and it was like a hello world thing. So you're gonna have to explain to me a little bit.
Ah.
So are we actually catching JavaScript exceptions and handling them like on behalf of like whatever, you know, whatever JavaScript engine is through the exception?
So we don't have the whole of the like types and so on. It's primarily just saying this is a JavaScript exception, and then it has an in exception that is basically just a string. So like capturing that you actually get some information back about what problem occurred. So it's not that smart, I guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but you could maybe make some smaller JS interrupt to actually get the errors back, or maybe in the JavaScript wrapper actually try to capture these and respond depending on what errors you get. I know that's something David does is in his project as well, like trying to see if the promise actually happened or not, if it was successful.
So I was going to ask a question here. Can you scroll up just a couple lines, or no, sorry, down?
Yeah.
You have that handle, directory handle. The object that's actually being returned from show directory picker async. What kind of object is that?
So that's one of the objects that I created, which is basically a wrapper around is this concept of having a directory handle. So I built all this on something called like from the specifications that is in the like the draft for the project. So if we go back to like the article that I found originally about it, I think they link to the specifications. So this is like a nice draft, which is I don't know if you can see it on the stream, but like an unofficial draft. So it's not final yet, but it's very fun to like actually build with something very early. And then if we look down here, don't know if I should zoom in. We have a function called show directory picker, where they specify that you can on the window call show directory picker and then get a handle back.
So your handle object is like a C# object that wraps the JavaScript representation of that. So it's like it's an IJS object or something.
Yeah, we can actually just look at that right now if you want.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So this is the project which we saw just before. This is the tree map chart, just in my Visual Studio instead. So you ask actually what type is that? We can just hover over it. It's a file system directory handle, nullable. And if we F12 and then F12 again, we get into my project, which is up here, which is the actual wrapper, which is a Razor class library, which is kind of like a collection of different components or classes that can be used in different Razor projects. So they can be used both in MVC and Razor and Blazor. And then, of course, there's some limitations. Obviously, you can't use the JS interop in most Razor projects, but that's that's something you probably know if you use the package.
So is where you're defining your interop between the JS library and the C# class.
Yeah. So that has some different functions, which is what you actually can call on that object. So you can get all the values, which is all the children of that folder. Or you can get the file handle, which is like a specification of the actual file, if it were to be a Yeah. I guess it's just a handle. Yeah. Which you need to actually read the directory. Yeah. And then a directory file handle, and we can actually remove folders. Whoa, kind of scary. Another method is the resolve, which makes it possible for like a single file handle to know all the way down the hierarchy of all the folders where it actually is.
And this requires a secure context. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's also something. If we go here and then scroll all the way down over here, they have an ideal index, which is like a nice overview of all the different things written in this standard called ideal, which is used by a lot of web ideal, used by all these people who make the standards for the browsers and web and so on. We can actually go down and see for the file system directory handle. We see that interface here. See that it inherits from this file system handle, which is a more general handle. Also see that it is only applicable in this secure context. Yeah.
So that means that in order for this API to be accessed, just so there's clarity for our viewers, the user of the client browser actually has to opt into that. Like they'll be prompted natively from their browser that says, "Hey, this site wants access to your file system. Yes or no?"
Yeah, and that's, I guess, some get like scared and say, "Oh, then you could just read all my files and so on." But they have made some privacy considerations and some security considerations in the draft for the API. So they have thought about it, and they have thought about like that the browser actually has to limit what you can do.
So I'm curious, when, like, if you're, for example, to open up, we might break things here. Let's try something real quick. If you go back to your demo WebAssembly app that's you've deployed,
Yeah.
and if you click up on the little black padlock next.
Yeah, here.
Yep. And then you say file editing, reset permission. There, click that off.
Oh, yeah, okay, maybe not that one.
Maybe file editing. I click that one.
Yeah.
And then close it. Yeah, it will ask you to reload. So you'll reload now. And now if you hit like open directory, it'll prompt you, right?
Yeah. So if I open the same directory as before.
It didn't prompt you.
Now
it prompts you.
Yeah, right. Because it remembered that I had already given access to that folder before. So now it actually prompts for it.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is also kind of the fun thing, because it's a single page application, that the lifetime of the single page is actually longer than you would expect, because the page doesn't reload when you go to the other like sub pages. So if we go like back here, the page didn't reload. It just like
client side
tries to act as if it had another page.
Right. What I was trying to get at, and what I'm really curious about, is like, is there two separate secure contexts, one for reading and one for writing?
Yeah. So if we go back to the specifications, we can actually
I saw at the very top there was an enum of the IDL index. One said read, one said reads write.
Yeah, exactly. So this file system permission mode is used in some different parts. For example, this query permission. So here we can that's tough.
Try to scroll.
There. So that uses this descriptor, which then gets like a read mode, which is by default
just read mode. Okay.
Yeah. And we can both query to see what the actual permission is currently, but you can also like request either to have either to have the read or the read write permissions.
That makes sense, because I was concerned that like the user says, sure, you can read these files, but then at some point later on, there's some sort of write act that happens kind of without them knowing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's also like, that's kind of what we see in the open file example. If we refresh, that it actually first and okay. again, it's because it's still in the same context. But yeah, you would have seen that it has to like re-request the read,
Right.
and
right.
then afterwards re-request the write.
Okay. Yep. That's what I was getting at. I was really curious about that. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, with .NET MAUI release coming up, is that something that you could use this with .NET MAUI and have kind of like that desktop feel to it as well?
Yeah. So I know I'm not that big in MAUI, but I know that they have worked a lot on the web view part, which is like a kind of an embedded part of some web in the MAUI application. And I know they have a lot of possibilities to make handles with the Blazor components, so you can actually load like Blazor components or Razor components in your MAUI project. But I'm not sure if they have all the same browser APIs as the other browsers. So that might be depending on your system, which underlying browser it actually uses.
Yeah.
For example, I know that currently this file system access API is not supported on that many browsers. Like if we look at
Okay.
can I use and then search for the file system access. Did I write something wrong, or is it multiple words? Probably multiple words. Yeah, file system access API.
39%, top right hand corner. That's really low.
Yeah, and we look for like
Yeah, none
usage
of the
relative.
mobile.
That's definitely because it's not supported for Chrome on Android yet. So I think when we hit that, it will get a big bump, and we will see a lot more adoption.
Ooh, it's really disheartening to see that Internet Explorer doesn't have much support there.
Oh. Heavily, like Edge is a bit higher than that. Yeah, I think that's probably something that we will see at some point, that Chrome gets that for Android as well. I hope at least, because I really want to see how that looks in your phone, like the whole interaction. Because it's not only that you can do like open the default directory opener. If we look at here, at this example, maybe I'll open it here instead. 2 seconds. Look back here. We actually have some different options that we can pass to this show directory picker. For example, which folder it should start in, where there are made some defaults, which I have made this enum for, with some documents, desktop downloads, music, pictures, or videos. And I think that's going to be really interesting in like an mobile phone. Like, is there actually a documents folder or something like that? Like how is that standardized across different platforms?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So one thing I've got a question about is you've shown like opening and updating existing files. Do you have like a mechanism exposed through this API surface area that lets you create new files?
Yeah, I have a demo as well for that. So if we save a file, we can open a save file. Maybe that's a bad word and bad phrasing. But basically we can. Interesting.
Oh, did I break it? I didn't break it.
Maybe file editing on.
I forewarned you. I said we might break something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But we could save it. So now I can either choose an existing file, or we can write in some name. For example, this is a new file. That might be small for the people on the stream. .txt. And then that's a new file which I can write to. Then because we opened the file as a new file that we created, we don't have to explicitly request that you actually get write access.
So Out of curiosity, is there supposed to be like a save button here now or no?
So basically, in this example, I just make a handler on this text area that
Okay.
says every time you have a key down, I think, it writes to the file.
Okay.
And that might,
Oh.
if it was a big file, that might not be a good idea.
Right,
but,
right. Oh.
But like for
So it's
these,
auto saving every time after you
Yeah.
open it for editing.
yeah. And if we saw that in the other example, I think when you wrote here, they made like an asterisk up
Mhm.
here, and then when you saved, it actually like invoked the whole save thing,
Nice. Okay.
like in other IDEs.
You could like even like debounce, right? And say like after like a minute or two of whatever, you could auto save. So if I'm trying to like visualize the code here in that screen. So if you have, you know, a new file that you create and you have a handle to it, what if you don't type anything, don't save anything, and you go to a different tab? One, does that properly get cleaned up? And two, what do you end up with on disk?
That is a good question.
Sorry, I try to always think of like edge cases and stuff.
Yeah, because if we look in the code for the save file, I'm not actually sure if it's really specific. Like if like sometimes when you read the code, you're like, okay, obviously it does this, but actually I'm not sure in this part because like here we have it. Up here we have the code for the markup, and down here we have that we actually open this show save file picker. But then we just get the file, and then we get the text from the file. But I guess the file is actually empty. So I think it has created the file, and then it reads an empty file.
Mhm.
But we will test it now because you asked. Because I also want to know actually.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, end up with an empty file then.
A new file. Save. And then if we go away and try to maybe open a file here, go to my downloads, it has created a file. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Because where we actually write to the file is only down here when we actually like invoke this text area changed. Where it says like the final is not null, and we have written something that is not like that isn't actually a string. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Then we create this this create writable, and then we can write to that and then close it. And
so keep going.
Yeah, and I think that's similar to what we know from like blobs and so on, because we can also use blobs, which is like a concept in JavaScript for handling different kinds of objects. This is all like the same API as many people know already.
I was just curious about some of like the C# idioms, if they're kind of bleeding through here, like implementing like iDisposable or iasync disposable, and you know, if you're accessing file system handles and things like that, like if you navigate away, and what the cleanup regimen should look like. And so I was just that's kind of where my head was at. But I wanted to ask a question specifically about some of the naming. So did you take any liberties with kind of naming things with the APIs that you're wrapping, or did you just kind of do like a one-to-one?
I made some liberties because I don't want people to feel like they are just writing JavaScript in Visual Studio, because obviously this is not the name of the actual method. Actually, the original name would just be create writable with a small c, but that doesn't feel very much like C#.
Right.
And obviously I see different people have different styles. I've seen a lot of people that are like, this is the thing I wrap, so I use the same names. But I think that people will enjoy it more if they feel like this is C# I'm writing in.
It always
when
feels
you-
like there's. Go ahead, Myra.
No, I was gonna say that when you were showing your interop class, I was gonna say that I like the naming convention because it's like you could relate to the original function name, but it looked like C#. So
Yeah, and that's also like a general standard for things that are async to just have async appended in the end, so people know I have to await this.
I feel like there's always you go to consume these wrapper projects or other compatibility layer projects, and there's always that project that took the underlying technology's naming convention, and it's just distracting and
Yeah.
it's hard to work with when you're not, it's not like a naming convention or that you're familiar with.
Like I worked with the Google diff library in C# a month ago, and there they have like a snake case, and then having snake case in C#, I was like, ooh, this is dangerous. Which it was challenging to look at it.
So what's been some of the biggest challenges that you've had, like in writing this? Like, has it been super enjoyable, or has there been, tests that have been difficult to write, or anything that along the way you've thought to yourself, oh, this is such a pain in the butt?
Like, I think there's still some things that I haven't worked on yet, because I think it would need a lot more work to actually get that done. I have like a slide or a tweet from a guy I can try to like share. I'm not sure if my PowerPoint will open on the right page. Obviously, it doesn't. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Johan, he wrote to me like as a repost, like a repost of my Twitter post, where he like commented that like, oh, it's really cool, nice. But he also commented that it needs this drag and drop because he uses that a lot in his project. But currently that's not really possible, I think, with the current state, because I'll basically just go into it. So actually the whole web ideal for that part is very simple. It's just this data transfer item, which is a thing that you get when you have a drop zone, which is like kind of a div, which from the different pages where you can drop a file in with just going from a folder and over to the browser. That's kind of nice that you get actually use these items that already exist, and that's also what is called in Blazor. But we can't use JS interop on that object directly because it's just the object with the attributes that are on that, which is kind of sad. So we would have to like make a much bigger project for us to actually use this API for that.
So is that because of Blazor limitations?
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with that right now. I would have to like do a lot more wrapping of other parts in order to actually get that to work. Like if we look at I think I can find that. It's called data. I think I served to that before. Data transfer item. I have it down here. Class, which is defined in Blazor, which is actually an object we can get. But the problem is that it's just an object with these two attributes, and we can't really make JS interop on the object itself, which would be cool. I think I'm going to write like an issue maybe requesting that.
I was just about to ask that because it sounds like you're probably in a great position to log an issue around that and ask for that functionality.
Yeah.
So what exactly is it missing?
So for example, if we have an element reference for some element in the DOM, like we can make the ref and then refer to some element, we can use that and pass it in to some JS library that can actually reference that object, which is pretty cool because a lot of JavaScript libraries and browser APIs use references to DOM elements. So that is kind of like making a reference to that C# object which Blazor handles, but we can't do that for the data transfer item, sadly. But maybe in the future, I think it's really cool.
So we did have a question around basically, creating a simple program. What does it take to get started with your project? Do you have like a NuGet package available somewhere, or?
Yeah. So whoa, that's zoomed in. If we go to my GitHub, we can see here there's a package, a NuGet package, where we can download it. And also
Awesome.
here we have like an embedded README, which is just the same README as we saw in my GitHub project. And if we then install it with like the .NET add package command or NuGet command, or just using the NuGet Explorer in Visual Studio, then we can find a package, and then we can import it in our import tracer, and then we can like add it to our services, and then inject it in our page, and then use it like I've done in all my examples.
Now, you said you were a student. Did you do this for any type of project, or this is just like your contribution to the community?
Yeah, I think it's just my contribution. I think it was like a fun challenge.
So if I were you, I would play that up to every professor that you can, that, hey, I created this open source project and I went on this Microsoft web stream and talked about it. And I mean, that's going to get you some street cred, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Open source developer, like all these things, right? I'm
Yeah.
publishing packages on NuGet. I'm curious, and this might be reaching a bit, but in your university, are they teaching .NET and C#?
No, disappointingly not, because yeah, I guess that depends on the area you're from. But that's more of the software department that does that.
Okay.
But I've worked it through other means. Like my
Awesome.
first job, I got introduced to C#, where I learned VB.NET before that when I was very little. When I was like 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You started
So,
early.
yeah.
Yeah. VB. Oof, VB.NET. That brings back memories.
Yeah. Or like I actually started with like ASP, but then VB.NET was like a huge improvement on that. Like it was so much more effective, more productive to get something done.
Awesome.
Still have some like small code examples that run in VB.NET for like toy things.
And are you looking for help on your project and on your repo? Is like, or like, are there issues there that people can jump in, or how is it going? Like, what is, you mentioned that you're missing that other part that would take a lot of work, but is there any other plans for your API?
That is actually a good question, because I also have issues, obviously, and people are more than free to make issues. Actually, something we saw earlier, maybe just with a quick site, was this front page where we can see if this file system access API is actually supported in this current browser. And this was actually a recommended feature by someone who made an issue, which is now closed because it's done.
Nice.
And he said, hey, are you planning to make it on NuGet? I said, yes. And then he said, what about a is supported method? And I thought, yeah, that's actually a good idea, because especially for this package, it's kind of in the air if it's supported in your system. And that might be nice to actually be able to like do in your code, say, okay, they actually have support for this, so I'm going to show it. Or they don't have, so I'm going to some default or something that doesn't have the same features.
Like a redirect to can I use with a sad face.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then I just got another issue just today, actually, 9 hours ago, where someone had an error where they couldn't open a directory with one of the samples I made. And then my first question is, of course, is it Blazor WASM or server? Because there are some differences. I know a lot of the things you make, David Pine, is both for Blazor server and WASM, and I've kind of like started in the WASM, but I think it could be really cool to actually get to that in the future, actually making it for Blazor server as well. So that's kind of like an open issue that I'm going to work on at some point as well.
Yeah, I'd love to collaborate too. I just need to find time myself. So I encourage everyone here who's watching, if you have a few spare cycles, help Kristoffer out, jump in here. It seems as though we can just use issues to pose questions. I presume we can also, suggest features, as was shown with like the is supported. So
Yeah.
awesome. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have some more plans in my mind for like other things I want to wrap. Like previously I've done a lot of work with SVG, where I've made this, if I can spell, where I made this SVG editor in Blazor WASM as well, where you can like edit some SVGs directly. I can try to show a demo quick.
So yeah, we need this actually. We need this so that we can, if you combine this with your file system access, all of our hosts here will be really happy, because now we can create our thumbnails that we create for the shows. Because we
Yeah.
don't, our tool right now is broken, or
Ah.
it could be improved upon. So we could totally steal that. We're gonna steal this. I'm gonna making a note now.
Nice.
It's not stealing when it's open source.
Check the license.
Borrowing forever.
It's MIT, so no problem.
Someone asked, what level of math did this take?
I guess the file system access or the SVG.
It's probably the
Both.
latest one,
Yeah,
right?
maybe.
Okay, yeah. It has some math, but like I
SVG.
haven't taken any courses in this. Like we had some course that I could have taken on like computational geometry, but I didn't take that part. But it's definitely some parts that are more complex. And there are still some parts on this project as well, which I'm not 100% like finished with, because there's some problems that I need to like define how I want to solve. Like I can try to show that actually. It's kind of like right now it's very fiddly and not that solid. If we have this heart, we can try to move it, but it jumps a lot. So kind of like getting this moved to a specific point with like having these constraints of where these points are is something I'm kind of working on, trying to like first model how this problem is actually like defined, and then maybe looking at how you can solve it.
You've got.
But it's really cool.
That is so cool. Yeah, I love this. So
Yeah.
and this is this using like the Canvas APIs?
I started with trying to use the Canvas API, but actually this is all SVG elements in the DOM. So it's kind of first it struggled a lot if you had a lot of objects, and we also see that, for example, with this, it has a bit more shutter like stats, like yeah, it doesn't follow the mouse that as good as the other shapes, because there are some like different objects here that is also need to be rendered and updated continuously, which Blazor takes handle of. So I'm also thinking about like trying to use the Canvas API for that. And there are some great people who also make wrappers for the Canvas browser API. And that's something where we also seen a lot of movement in, like someone made one 3 years ago and then that didn't get maintained that much. And then someone made another approach, and then .NET 5 came out, and then we had IJS object references, which made some other options available. So like there's a lot of movement and a lot of development in the area.
Interesting. What are the other features here? You got snap to integer and animation.
Oh yeah, so that was kind of the thing. So like this was kind of
Look at our
showing.
bot. It's our bot. .NET
Yeah,
bot.
they done it that. Like I was showing that like some months ago. He could put up his arms. It's basically just because I looked at how I can optimize this, because I found that SVGs that has like floating points is not that effective in the browser. So I wanted to make an option that this kind of canvas or SVG area should only have whole numbers, which I'm also still working on because it's not perfect. But actually, the point that I was thinking about was this part, which is an animation where I can mark these areas, and then I can right click and then start an animation, and then that's some fireworks.
That's rad.
And that's all in like defined in like HTML SVGs with like having different colors that it changes throughout and all that. But that's actually one of the things I wanted to work on as well with the JS Interop, because right now it just starts wherever the like it was, if it had started from when the page loaded, which is not really what I want. I want it to like start from when I right click it and said start animation. So you can use JS Interop to call like function I think called begin element on an animation, and then that starts the animation just then, which I think could be more nice. Open up for some other interactions.
The snap to integer one remind me of the mod, the dotnet bot site, and I'm thinking that we could add the movement of the arms and legs and stuff like that
Yeah,
to the mod. The mod
Just have a
does.
bot like flailing.
like one of those inflatable tube men.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, like the slow like.
I was also like,
Awesome.
when I saw that, I saw that I was like, ooh, nice. that I maybe I could use that.
So
So I tried to load it in here, but it didn't. Like don't have all the support yet.
Oh, yeah.
Well, was that like an emoji on the? Wow.
yeah,
Timely
on the Twitch
emoji.
stream. Yeah.
Ah, nice.
Well played, friend.
And there's a delay, so they probably heard us talking about that after they had already hit send.
Quick reaction.
So I just we're winding down to the end of the hour. I would just like for you to tell me a little bit about your studies. Are you, so you're working on your master's? Are you getting toward the end of your degree program?
Yeah, I will be done in 1.5 months. It's going
Wow.
to be nice. Getting done with my thesis.
Congrats, that's awesome.
I'm studying in the area of like data intensive systems, which might not make sense to everyone, but it's kind of like big data and then kind of a counterpart to machine learning. So instead of having some things that might be black box, which some people have heard about, like you don't really know about the mechanism inside, we look more at like algorithms that we know how work and that we know what it means when they find some results. So it's easier to analyze the results of that.
And any plans after the master's done?
Getting some job in development. Maybe something with Blazor could be cool. I think it's a very nice area. But I've also worked in other areas of .NET.
So I want you to hold on to the URL from this video, right? Because this next part is very important. Employers, you want to hire Kristoffer. We're very impressed with him, and this project that he's done it would be an asset for every project that you have in the future.
Nice.
And while you were doing that, I had a banner that said "Looking for VB.net job." You don't want a VB.
No.
Sorry, go ahead, Kristoffer.
No, it's like there's obviously some places where they still use VB.net, and I think there's a lot of options. For example, I saw what C# Fritz does with like the whole Blazor forms, where you can like use the experience you have from developing in web forms, going over to Blazor, like going to a new generation. So I think it's nice to like be able to still use some of the old knowledge that you have from older projects.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And I don't think we have a guest for next week's show yet. So
not yet. We might yet though before Monday. So hold out hope.
Yeah. So if you want to share, like Kristoffer, he came here to share his project. We're looking for guests for the show. So please do sign up. And
do we have a banner for our form? I don't think we do.
We don't, but we can post on Twitter. If you follow us, you'll see a tweet about that. And I also posted on LinkedIn. There is the .NET developers group there on LinkedIn. There is the link to the forum, and we can get the links as well. If we get soon, you'll find it on Twitter too. But yeah, we're looking for guests. If you want to share what you're working on or something that you learned, we are very nice people.
Yeah.
Treat well our guests. So, and you can check out other great .NET Live TV, .NET Live TV streams and other shows on .NET/live. And then we'll see us live here when we get our next guest lineup. So thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Kristoffer, for coming on the show. It
Yep.
was really a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, everybody. See you next week, or hopefully.
Bye.
Bye.